Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us. Today we're going to have a debate between a theist and an atheist, Rob and Ken. Thank you for being here. Allow me to introduce you, Rob. Rob is a Christian who enjoys photography and cycling, and he has a mild interest in poker and reading. He also has a fervent passion for MMA and exercise. However, Rob's deepest enthusiasm lies in the realms of teaching, preaching, apologetics, theology, and philosophy. With a diverse range of interests and profound commitment to intellectual and spiritual pursuits, Rob brings a wealth of knowledge and passion to today's debate. Rob, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for that, Anthony.
Thank you. And Ken?
Hey, how's it going? Rob, if you
can
throw my slide up real quick, I'll give a quick introduction.
Yeah, we'll start with Ken. Go ahead.
So my name is Ken Regic. I am debating in the negation here against Rob. So before we start, I'll give a quick introduction. I'm a writer, a technical writer in the 3D Second Amendment industry. I'm a minarchist libertarian. I'm 24, from California, now live in West Virginia. I have a GED, some college. I am religiously unaffiliated, though I was raised Roman Catholic in the Mexican tradition, and I deconverted from Catholicism at 10. I'm a layman. I'm not really an expert on anything. I just have curiosity and internet connection. So, and then whenever you guys are ready to start, I will get time started for my opening statement.
Do you want to take the slide off now, Ken?
Nope. I have the whole thing on one document. So time starting now. So really quick positional clarification for myself. I am not arguing in the affirmative position for anything. I am arguing in the negation against Rob's position and prescriptions. Assertions made by me are to be understood as the mainstream position expected to be held by any other unaligned individual. It is critical to understand that Rob is not defending Christianity as the default in this debate, but affirmatively proposing the Christian worldview as a viable and superior alternative to what most of the developed world already holds as its default, which is secular religious pluralism. If Rob's arguments fail to convince you that his proposed systems for logic, morality, epistemology, and design are correct, he has lost the debate. We're going to go over some definitions really quick. A claim is an assertion as a statement of fact. An example would be God exists. A belief is an assertion stated as a statement of opinion. An example would be, I believe God exists. Knowledge is a claim that is demonstrable and testable with measurable accuracy. Theism is the active belief in one or more deities. Agnostic or soft atheism is the lack of belief in one or more deities. Gnostic or hard atheism is the active belief that no gods exist. Evidence is a body of facts which are either positively indicative of or exclusively concordant with one available hypothesis over any other. Science, the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the natural world. The scientific method is the procedure through which reliably true knowledge is observed and acquired, Observation, research, hypothesis, experimentation, analysis, and peer review. A scientific theory is the highest level of evidentiary confidence achievable by a hypothesis. Theories are concretely evidenced predictive models for an observed phenomenon containing facts, evidence, experimentation, and laws to explain phenomena in nature. Examples include cell theory, plate tectonic theory, the theory of gravity, the theory of general relativity, and the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution is defined academically as a change in allele frequency in a population over geologic time. Faith, a belief in a proposition absent any evidence in favor or in spite of any available evidence against the proposition. So I have 5 positions. I have a general position and 4 specific positions. My comprehensive position. Robert does not have sufficient empirical evidence to demonstrate that his chosen deity, the Christian creator God Yahweh, exists. Ergo, any claims made by him that implicate or require this deity ought to be understood as matters of personal opinion and faith, not as observable reality. Further, Robert's chosen worldview, Protestant Christianity, Reformed Pentecostal, Young Earth Creationist, does not adequately provide effective systems for logic, morality, epistemology, and the origin of life. Before Robert can reasonably expect any human being to entertain his interpretation of the moral prescriptions handed out by his chosen version of the Bible, he must empirically produce his God. Rob, I want to be absolutely clear with you. It's not simply that we know you're wrong, it's that I believe you do not have enough evidence to even make your claim. There is nothing we observe in the natural world that is better explained by your worldview, and there is nothing we observe in the natural world that can only be explained by your worldview. To the contrary, all the claims you make about the natural world have already been proven wrong. Your claims exist ex nihilo, from nothing. On logic, no gods have yet been demonstrated to exist. Ergo, it is illogical to assume that any particular god exists until such a point where one is demonstrated to exist. This does not mean that no gods currently exist or that a god couldn't come into existence in the future, but simply that arguments that derive validity from the existence of any particular god must first demonstrate that this god exists. Logic is a tool devised by humans to accurately describe what we observe in nature and has been employed, if unknowingly, by individual humans since the rise of Homo sapiens hundreds of thousands of years ago. No god is necessary to explain or justify this, as it is the natural consequence of thousands of generations of learning and development. Rob's conception of logic stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of how the rules of logic work. This makes it very difficult to communicate to him why his argumentation is malformed. The primary malformation is the presupposition of the existence of his chosen interpretation of the Christian creator God Yahweh. This presupposition is succeeded by another, that the Bible is a reliable text on any matter other than the mythology of Canaanite peoples between the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE. This secondary claim is also undemonstrated and in fact refuted by all available archaeological findings and the literary analysis of the Bible as a historic text. Rob may point to passages contained in the Bible as evidence of its reliability. This is not how we determine this. We take what the Bible claims and compare it to what we already know about the natural world, and if the Bible does not conform with our understanding of reality, we discard it as incorrect and move on. The Bible is not evidence. The Bible is a claim. Any argument made by citing the Bible can be rejected unilaterally, as the Bible has not been demonstrated to be a reliable source of information. On morality. Morality is a subjective internal tool defined by an individual based on their environment and experiences. There is no objective, universal standard of morality, only competing moral systems in the marketplace of ideas. Morality is an emergent property of human socialization and has been employed by individual humans since at least the dawn of civilization, when the first recorded penal codes were established. No god is necessary to explain or justify this, as it is the natural consequence of thousands of generations of social interactions. Rob's chosen moral system stands fundamentally opposed to the values of freedom, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, justice, consent, and peace. Rob's chosen moral system is one that supports, promotes, and glorifies evil actions and evil ideas. Under Rob's chosen moral system, finite crimes are punished infinitely, innocents are punished for the crimes of the guilty, and judgment is cast by an inaccessible, unelected, unaccountable party. Rob's moral system is dependent on an ahistorical text that at worst condones and at best provides no uniformly consistent condemnations for the following: genocide, wars of aggression, war crimes, slavery, human sex trafficking, human sacrifice, murder, rape, and the death penalty for various non-criminal acts. Enforcing the edicts proclaimed by Rob's chosen moral system, which is based on the undemonstrated claim that a particular God exists, would cause undue interference in the lives of millions, if not billions of people, and require the use of unusual amounts of coercion, likely state coercion. On epistemology, knowledge is gained through empirical evidence, meaning data that is analyzable, independently reproducible, and falsifiable. Only after a claim is demonstrated to be true by multiple independent reproductions that consistently produce the same result can it be considered fact. Note that this does not mean consensus of belief, but rather consistency of demonstration. My position, evidentialism, also invokes Hitchens' razor. The burden of proof lies on the party making a positive claim. Further, that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Rob's chosen moral position, epistemological position, which I will label as revelationalism, is based on the circular reasoning regarding the text claimed to dispense revelation, and is inadequate for explaining how humans interact with and obtain knowledge. On design, our current understanding of nature and natural processes conflicts with the concept of intelligent design. Arguments for intelligent design are fallacious at worst, like the watchmaker analogy, and speculative at best, like theistic evolution. The evidence provided by the fossil record is more than adequate to explain the diversity of life going back to at least the Paleoarchean, which is 3.6 to 3.2 billion years ago. Abiogenesis, while still an unresolved matter in biology, presents the most likely explanation for the origin of life on our planet. Rob's position in favor of intelligent design as a young Earth creationist fails to account for the Earth's history as we know it, which extends billions of years past his claimed creation date, and creates far more issues than it resolves. It also fails to account for space and cosmology in general. going to go over some of the specific problems with the Ham-Baraminic model, which is what Rob subscribes to. Problem number 1, Baramin or created kind is a taxonomically vague and undefined classification that does not explain current observations in biology and zoology. Depending on the size of a kind, it's either too big to fit on the ark or too small to provide for millions of years of diversification. It doesn't explain ring species or partial hybridization, which evolution predicts. Are domestic cats and lions a part of the same Baramin? Why can't they interbreed? If lions and tigers are of the same Baramin, why can they only partially hybridize? Are members at the end of a ring species who cannot interbreed with each other, but can with their respectively adjacent species form from different Baramins? Second problem is the radiation problem, or the heat problem. Current understanding of geology and radiometric dating, along with the behavior of radioactive isotopes, makes the age of the Earth and fossils within it practically indisputable. The young Earth creationist model would require extreme acceleration in the rate of decay of radioactive materials that would result in the surface temperature of the Earth to be far too high to support life as we know it and permanently irradiate the planet. Next are the anthropological problems. We have human skeletons far older than the proposed young Earth creationist creation date. The Homo remains are dated to around 200,000 years ago. Human migrations make no sense on a 10,000-year-old Earth. The young Earth creationist position cannot explain the migration of humans to the Americas, as Beringia was inaccessible as of 11,000 years ago. This is a GIF right here you can see. As of 11,000 years ago, this land bridge, inaccessible. The origins of Homo sapiens makes no sense from the young Earth creationist position, as we have mountains of evidence to suggest that anatomically modern humans arose in sub-Saharan Africa, and nothing to suggest that they arose in ancient Persia. Stellar observations. We regularly observe stars in our own galaxy, the Milky Way, far older than the proposed young Earth creationist date, including the black hole at the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A star, which is 27,000 light years away from us approximately, meaning that the light that is emitted that we see is at least 27,000 years old. The cosmic background radiation, which is detectable by any radio receiver, is 14 billion years older than the proposed young Earth creationist creation date. I'm going to propose some win conditions here for Rob. If Rob does any of the following, I will concede the debate immediately and without question. Provide empirical data relating to his chosen deity that confirms its existence, along with clearly written procedure for reproduction that, when followed by anyone, anywhere, at any time, regardless of faith, produces the same exact result every time. Summon a paranormal entity of any kind and submit it for questioning, along with clearly written procedure that, when followed by anyone, anywhere, at any time, regardless of faith, produces the exact same entity every time. Provide a predictive model for any natural process with complete documentation from beginning to end based on his belief system, along with clearly written procedure that, when followed by anyone, anywhere, at any time, regardless of faith, produces a prediction about a natural phenomenon we later found to be true through scientific inquiry. I'm going to preempt some of Robert's arguments here. These are things that he has actually said on live streams or in videos. God is immaterial, not scientific, or not subject to your standards of evidence. This is special pleading. If God has no material existence, he does not interact with the material world, so he can't be measured, so he might as well not exist in any meaningful manner. That which is not scientific cannot be trusted as a source of information on what is and is not scientific, nor can it be trusted to make accurate observations or predictions about scientific inquiries. The standard of evidence for all proposals is the same. God does not get a free pass on needing to be directly observed by human beings, in nature, which is the standard you impose on evolution. Atheism is circular, self-defeating, nonsensical, etc. This is a thought-ending cliche. There is nothing wrong with the statement, I don't believe you. Atheism steals from God. This is presupposition. You can't steal something from a thing you don't believe exists. Further, there is no scientific or philosophical first-mover advantage. Ideas do not belong to the first entity to express them in perpetuity. Atheists don't make intellectual arguments, only emotional or moral arguments. This is incorrect and irrelevant. I have made several intellectual arguments here. Even if this wasn't true, moral and emotional grievances with your belief system are perfectly valid, and you do have an obligation to respond to them if you wish to be taken seriously. Commonality is not common ancestry. Inferring one from the other is circular. This is an argument from ignorance. Commonality is a consequence of common ancestry and confirmation of the prediction made by the theory of evolution that all life forms that share a common ancestor will have commonalities. Evolution has never been directly observed. This is another argument from ignorance. The peppered moths are a wonderfully well-documented example of evolution in action, showing speciation in the span of human lifetimes. Evolution would mean humans are moving towards a different kind of human or dying off. This is another argument from ignorance. Evolution has no goals. Selection pressures come and go without any rhyme or reason, and only then does natural selection act on populations over long periods of time. Further, there are no major environmental selection pressures presently on our species. Radiometric dating data is read incorrectly or otherwise not trustworthy. This is an argument from incredulity and conspiracy. Radiometric dating is used every single day by the fossil fuel industry and is required for the extraction of petroleum products from the earth. If you drive a car, use public transport, or use electricity, you have seen the evidence for the accuracy and reliability of radiometric dating with your own eyes. Life from non-life is impossible or has never been observed. This is another argument from incredulity. The Miller-Urey experiment demonstrated in 1952 that amino acids can be spontaneously generated in conditions similar to those of prebiotic Earth. Just because you don't understand it and refuse to read on it and the subsequent studies doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. No direct observation of abiogenesis as it happened. This is missing the point. Direct observation of the phenomenon is not necessary to deduce how it happened. Only a mechanism we can verify works. A murder does not have to be witnessed in order to find the murderer. DNA is biological code. This is an argument from anthropocentrism. This is an analogy, not a literal description of DNA. All DNA does is store information. It is not a machine, and it is not Turing complete. Atheism is unprovable. This is also missing the point. Agnostic atheism is not a positive claim. It does not need to be proved. Evidence for young earth creationism, intelligent design, biblical historicity, or God's existence is being suppressed by the scientific establishment through abusing of the mechanism of peer review. This is another argument from conspiracy. Being told that your arguments are malformed and your conclusions are incongruent with nature is not suppression, it's separating reality from fiction. Historian, scientist, biblical scholar X says Y. Argument from authority. It doesn't matter. The preponderance of evidence says otherwise, and that's what we go by. The universe or the world is fine-tuned for life. This is another argument from anthropocentrism. Earth is not finely tuned for life. Life is finely adapted to the Earth. Speciation is microevolution. Nothing produces anything except its own kind. You are missing the point. Speciation is macroevolution, and the law of monophyly is evidence of evolution. No new genetic information can enter into a species. This is flat out incorrect. Accumulation of successive genetic mutations constitutes new genetic information and results in speciation. Polyploidy, which is common in plants and some fish, also constitutes new genetic information. We can only infer into the past so long, any further and you risk bias. This is a non sequitur and just flat out incorrect. Scientific observation can and does discover data regarding events millions, even billions of years into the past, like most of astrophysics. As our ability to gather data increases through technological advances, we can look further and further into the past. According to you, this is an argument from omission and from conspiracy. Individual opinions on the matter are irrelevant. Scientific evidence, when collected in good faith, is not and cannot be produced with spin or narrative in mind. The peer review process is designed to prevent bad actors from doing so. There is no conspiracy in scientific circles to rule God out. You have simply not given anyone a reason to rule him in. And I think that's done.
Well, thank you, Rob. Sorry, Kem. Rob,
No worries.
Your mic is off.
All right. So am I good to go now, Anthony?
Yeah, you're good to go. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, you can start the clock now. So first of all, I would like to welcome everyone to this live debate between myself and Kem. I'm just going to say three things briefly and then get right into my opening statements. First, I would like to thank Kem for doing this debate with me and Anthony for moderating it and all those who are or will be watching it. A lot of good work goes into an event like this, and it's obvious that Kem and I myself have put a lot of effort and time into preparing it. A lot behind the scenes goes to work, and that's what makes an event like this possible. Just to make it clear and just clarify, I guess, three things in Kem's opening statements. I won't be arguing for a young earth creation or from the Bible in this particular debate, but rather aim simply to provide arguments that God exists. Finally, other than what I just said, I won't be responding to what Kem has said in his opening statements, but we'll be saving that for the rebuttal and cross and examination part of the debate. If anything in my opening statements, other than the second point I made, appears or seems to be a response to Kem's opening statements, that is completely unintentional. All right, so now that that's been said, let's get right to it. As affirmation, the purpose of this debate from my side, at least, is to provide good arguments that God does exist using logic, morality, design, and epistemology for how we can know that God truly does exist. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so first of all, we have the logic argument. Logic, as defined by Webster's Dictionary, is 1, the scientific study of the principles of reasoning, especially of the method and validity of deductive reasoning. 2, valid reasoning. And 3, a particular system or method of reasoning. Is it logical to deduce that God exists? I would argue, obviously, that it absolutely is, and I'll explain why. As I said, the first part of the definition of logic is that we can use and should use, obviously, deductive reasoning to make a particular claim or argument, and we can absolutely logically deduce that God does exist. I'll give a few examples of this particular line of reasoning. Keep in mind that valid reasoning, a particular system or method of reasoning, is also part of the definition of logic. Simply put, we can deduce that God does exist because in order to use logic, we must weigh things against each other mentally in order to make logical decisions, assessments, and conclusions. Or to put it another way, we must at least argue mentally at least one thing against another in order to determine whether or not something is logical or not. And since logic is an immaterial concept, which we can all agree on, I argue that all immaterial concepts come from a being who is himself immaterial. That would be using the scientific principle of reasoning to deduce that God must exist because an immaterial concept such as logic, which we all know to be evidently self-evident true, does exist and is something we all rely on every day of our lives. We can most certainly infer that God does exist since logic does as well. So secondly, we have the moral argument. Morality, as defined from Webster's Dictionary, is 1, the quality of being virtuous, and secondly, moral behavior. Not that I have said that. Moral defined is of or pertaining to the principles of right and wrong in accordance with standards of right conduct, and 3, arising from the inner sense of right and wrong. Or morality, simply put, means a code of conduct or behavior which we use to govern our lives in terms of what we judge to be good and evil, right and wrong. So the question I will posit, break down, and simplify is this. Break down and I put it this way. Why is morality a problem for Kem's position or the atheist position? When we break it down, the answer to the question becomes rather obvious. Let me set up the premise and we'll go from there. For morality to be objective, which I believe we all know to be self-evidently true, which every rational person knows, the source or standard for morality cannot be human in order to be objective. Let me explain what I mean by that. Again, if the source of morality was human, then the standard of morality would be entirely subjective, meaningless, and arbitrary. And the reason for that is, I've said, if the standard was human, then morality would be completely subjective. So I would argue that in order for morality to be objective, which it is, we need a non-human standard for it. So the only way for morality to be objective, which it is for a non-human standard. And all laws come from moral lawgivers, and morality is no exception. So I would simply put, for morality to exist, God must exist, and vice versa. So, okay. You can't claim, which is in atheism a philosophical position, and make moral absolute claims, which by default Kem must do, because atheism, as a philosophical position, doesn't allow for morality, objectivity, or any kind of morality, but simply preferences and opinions, as atheism clearly induces and is, and then but all atheists make claims about objective morality because atheists are moral beings, just as we all are. So atheism is entirely inconsistent, yet again, atheists will make moral claims all the time. So to conclude here, atheism fails at the logic test demonstrably, and moral test for that matter, demonstrably, and I would argue also irrefutably. So, okay, the third argument is the design argument. So again, I'll simply define it. So design, according to Webster's dictionary, is defined as the following. 1, to think up. 2, to form a plan. To have a goal or intention, to make by preliminary sketches or outlines. And A, under that subsection 2, a drawing or sketch. And B, the order of arrangement of the components and details of something according with a plan. 4, a plan or project. And 5, a well thought out purpose. Now, just going to mention briefly, the human body has numerous systems that we all need in order to function. We have a digestive system, we have an immune system, we have a nervous system, we have a respiratory system, and we have a reproductive system. That's 5, but there's many more, but I'm just going to submit for the sake of time that all of the systems are indicative of order. Order is indicative of design. Design is always indicative of intelligence. Therefore, I would submit that it's logical to deduce, using deductive reasoning, that intelligence was needed in order to create and design the human body. And I would argue that that DNA is biological code, and all code requires an intelligent mind to write it. The fact that DNA happens to be organic or biological is no exception to this. We all know computer code requires an intelligent mind to write it, and DNA is infinitely more complex than any computer code which has or ever will be written. The amount of DNA biological code in one human body is so precise for each individual, and keep in mind there's over 8 billion people on the planet, and no 2 people have the same 2 fingerprints. The odds of DNA not being designed is not close to 0%, it is 0%. I've heard the argument from one atheist that dealing 13 cards of the same suit is astronomically low, but still possible, of course. But the odds of DNA in relation to that argument is not only monumentally absurd, it doesn't deserve comparison because it would never happen. In conclusion, it's logical to deduce both DNA and the human body require intelligence and design. And finally, the epistemological argument. Epistemology, which is a big word, basically just means how do we know what we know, or the study of knowledge, or to put it simply, how can we know what we know is true? And to put this in even simpler terms, let's say hypothetically, I'm a contractor that builds houses for a living. If I start building a house and cut corners on its foundation, it's only a matter of time before that house begins to deteriorate from the ground up because I didn't get the foundation right. And I would say that analogously, we can use the same argument for our life. If the foundation of your life or mine has a weak foundation, morally, ethically, spiritually, psychologically, and or logically, it's only a matter of time before our lives will unravel, deteriorate, and self-destruct. And here, I believe we also have another fantastic and good reason why we can trust a theistic framework for giving us a good and proper foundation for one's epistemology. And the reason for that is God, who has all knowledge, gives us what we need in order to build a strong foundation for what we can and will know, as limited as knowledge is or could be. And I would also argue that, of course, morality is also an immaterial concept. And again, I would argue that immaterial concepts require an immaterial being in order to exist. Logic and morality and design all require an immaterial being. Now, of course, design is not immaterial, but it can be in some cases. But I would argue that obviously logic and morality are immaterial. And again, I would argue that immaterial concepts, or rather, require an immaterial being in order for them to exist. And again, we all know morality, right and wrong, good and evil are objective in that it's not just wrong to say that murder or assault is wrong subjectively, but it's absolutely immoral to do those things, to kill someone or to commit assaults. Those are objectively immoral and wrong. That's pretty much it for my opening statements, and I concede the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. That was very good. I guess now for Ken to respond.
Yeah, I'll make a couple of quick responses here. I don't have a whole lot. First off, logic is material. There's nothing immaterial about it. This is probably the main contention between us. You sound like a substance dualist, and I'm a substance monist. Logic is material. Morality is material. They're products of a material mind, which is contained within a material being, right? Because we live in a material existence. I think my camera's starting to act up. I might have to stop it here in a minute. Morality isn't a problem for atheists. We just think your moral system is bad. We see it produce bad results for most people. So we just don't think it's a good system to use. Morality is not objective. There's nothing objective about it. You and I can disagree on morality, and that makes it subjective. You and I have different opinions on what is moral and what is not moral. I have made no objective moral statements. My positions are subjective on morality. I don't like your moral system. I think it's bad. The word system, when you use it, this is anthropocentrism at work, right? Just because we call something a system doesn't mean that it is a system in any real sense outside of the human mind. This is a concept that people don't seem to grasp, is that the human mind is built to want to put things into neat intellectual boxes, and reality does not conform to those boxes. What else? Systems are also not indicative of order. Order is something that humans invented, right? Our conception of order does not exist tangibly in reality. Also, biology is not dependent on statistics. This idea that the chances of DNA coming about randomly is 0% is irrelevant. Biology is not dependent on statistics, and using this argument is kind of silly. I have only one question for you, Rob, because you are essentially making a material claim, right? You are claiming that your God exists materially within our material universe. So my only question for you is, can you produce materially, tangibly, this God?
We're not in cross yet. Yeah, I don't know. We're not in cross yet. Do you want to take
that's the end of my statement. I have nothing else for you.
Okay, so that's the end of your first or your rebuttal. Okay, so Siri, can you repeat the question, because I wasn't expecting to answer it.
My question is: you have made a fundamentally material claim, right, regarding the material existence of your God in the material reality that we live in. Can you materially produce this God?
No, I cannot materially produce this.
Then the conversation is over. That's it. If you cannot prove, or rather demonstrate, that your God exists materially, there is nothing else to talk about.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, I was arguing that God. I mean, I hope, anyways, that maybe perhaps I didn't make it clear in my opening statements that God is immaterial. And that
there is no such thing as immaterial things.
No,
all things are material.
God isn't.
If it exists, it is necessarily material because it exists within our material reality. It has a material existence. Again, I'm a substance monist, so that's the standard of evidence.
Okay. Yeah. So again, and I'll just say pretty quickly and succinctly that I'm arguing that God is immaterial and that God can exist immaterial in a material universe. Immaterially in a material universe.
He can exist immaterially in a material universe.
Yes.
That you realize that doesn't make any sense, right?
Well,
to exist necessarily requires a material existence.
No,
all things are material. There is no such thing as immaterial things.
No, immaterial. There's no such thing as. I agree.
Right. So when you say that God exists, you are necessarily making a material claim.
I fundamentally disagree, and the reason for that is, again, I believe that God can exist immaterially and does exist immaterially.
Can you demonstrate this? Can you produce an immaterial thing in our material reality?
Just let me finish for a second.
Sure.
So again, I'm just to say it briefly and succinctly that God can and does exist immaterially in the material universe because God is spirit. And I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay, can you produce this spirit for
No,
observation? Okay, well then it also doesn't exist.
Because he's immaterial.
If you can't produce it and demonstrate it, it doesn't exist, Rob. And until you demonstrate it, you don't expect anyone to believe you. And don't expect anyone to listen to you about your moral prescriptions that depend on the material existence, excuse me, the material existence of an immaterial thing.
Again, God is not an immaterial thing. He's an immaterial being.
Right. So again, if you cannot materially, tangibly produce this God for inspection, the conversation is over. You are making a material claim and failing to produce evidence for that material claim.
Yeah, again, I'm just going to say this one more time and just leave it at that. That God is immaterial, exists immaterially both outside the material, actually, and the material universe, and there's no problem. That doesn't pose a problem for my worldview because.
Well, yeah, because you presuppose it. You presuppose the existence of these things that you have not demonstrated, like spirit and God, and
Yeah, well, I mean,
you're just asserting that these things exist instead of demonstrating that they exist, and that's the problem.
Well, again, God is not a thing; He's a being.
Is a being not a thing? Are you a being?
I'm a being. I'm not a thing.
Okay, so then you're a thing, right? You have material existence.
I consist
So if God
of material things.
if God is a thing, if God is a being, then that means he has a material existence. Because otherwise he doesn't exist.
Well, if we're comparing human or other immaterial beings that require material things in order to exist, that would be true. But God is not human. He's spirit. He exists outside of time, space, and matter, and he created time, space, and matter.
Can you demonstrate this?
No, it's an argument from inference and deduction.
Okay, if you can't demonstrate it, then there's no reason for anyone to believe you.
Oh, yeah, I see we fundamentally disagree on that.
Right.
And that lots of people do believe in God.
I mean, the fact that lots of people believe in God does not mean that God is real. It just means that lots of people believe in God.
That's true.
Believe in a God that they cannot materially produce, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, that's what.
And then you make moral prescriptions that people must follow based on the presupposition that an immaterial thing exists, which you have not demonstrated.
Well, I'm not making the claim that people have to follow I'm not making the claim that people have to prescribe or follow the morality as prescribed by my particular worldview or belief system. I'm making the argument so far that morality and logic infer God, and that we can use deductive reasoning for those claims.
Yeah, but you haven't demonstrated how they do that. You have just asserted that they do.
Right. Yeah. I guess
you just said design requires a designer. Morality requires a moral lawgiver, and you're not really demonstrating anything. You're just claiming these things. You're not showing us the lawgiver.
Well, again, I said logic. Was it logic? Was it design? So I said systems. Systems are indicative of order.
Yeah,
and order
the term
is indicative.
system is a human-made creation. These are labels that we place on concepts, collections of things that we observe. The respiratory system does not exist tangibly outside the conception of the human mind. We label it.
Okay, so just let me finish with that interruption.
Sure.
So again, I said that systems are indicative of order, that order is indicative of design, and design is always indicative of intelligence. Would you at least agree that design is indicative of intelligence? And you have asserted this
without evidence.
No, would you agree that design is indicative of intelligence?
No.
So you would say that design doesn't require intelligence?
Not in the sense of nature, because I would disagree that nature is designed. Also, I would disagree with the earlier premise.
I'm not talking about nature specifically, but just design in general. Principally, would you say that?
I don't know how you're defining that.
Okay, well, I'll make it more clear in cross. That about that. So yeah, this is kind of it's almost feels like cross now, but this is just supposed to be the rebuttal part. So I would say that again, that systems are indicative of order, that order is indicative of design, that design is indicative of intelligence.
Yeah, I would disagree with the first part of that premise. And again, you haven't demonstrated this is true. You're just asserting this.
Yeah, for now, I'm making claims, and I
Sure.
tend to get more into it during later portions of the debate. So I don't know how long this has gone. How long has it gone, Anthony?
40 minutes.
Pardon?
We're 40 minutes in.
No,
Yeah,
I mean
we're
like when you start. How long has it gone when Chem started this?
The 20 minutes is up, so I guess we'll go to the next section, which is I don't know.
Cross. Yeah. So
cross.
now we're in cross. So
Okay.
Chem,
Sure.
you have.
I don't have any other questions for you. If you cannot
so-
demonstrate that this thing you are claiming actually exists, there is nothing more to talk about.
That's why I let this go, because of that what he just said. So that's why I figured, okay, let's run with what he's saying.
The first question we have to answer here before we talk about any of your claims is whether or not you can demonstrate that this God exists.
Okay, one second, Ken. So let's do this is a formal debate, so let's do this formally. You have 5 minutes to ask me questions, and I'll respond to them, and then vice versa. And we'll do that
I will ask you the same question again. You have made a material claim about the material existence of a God within our material reality. If you cannot produce this God, there is nothing else to talk about. Can you produce this God materially?
Well, as I said I guess we went to a bit of a back and forth rebuttals there. I've said it repeatedly that I don't believe I've made a claim that God exists materially. I've made the claim that God exists immaterially in the material
By
realm
insisting
and
that a thing exists, you are necessarily insisting that it exists materially. There is no other excuse me. There is no other way for a thing to exist. To exist is necessarily to exist materially. You have not demonstrated any other way for something to exist. You have not demonstrated the existence of an immaterial thing, right? Nothing immaterial has ever been demonstrated to exist.
Well, it's because
so for you to just assert that God is immaterial as a solution to this problem is another presupposition.
Yeah, I am presupposing that God exists immaterially as my claim, and my reason for that is again, I would still suggest to both you, Anthony, and anyone who is or will be listening to this at some point that morality and logic are immaterial concepts, and I believe
but they're not. They're material things. They are products of material minds.
They're products of material minds that exist materially.
No, they don't. They exist materially. They exist as energy, as neurons firing in your head. That is a material existence.
Can you demonstrate that logic exists materially?
Yes, it is a material tool that we use in our brains to observe and classify reality. To observe things in reality. That is a material thing that the brain does.
But you can't put logic under a microscope per se.
You can put the brain under a microscope and see how the brain acts as people are doing things with logic. That is a material existence. It exists as energy, which is the potential to do work, which is what the brain is doing when you are using logic. It is working. So that is a material existence, the material existence of logic and morality. You can see how different areas of the brain react.
Okay. So again, I'm just going to say just briefly and succinctly that logic is, I'll say logic alone. Logic is an immaterial concept.
How do you demonstrate that?
And logic exists immaterially in the material. So again, I would agree with what Kem said, that logic is obviously logic comes from material, exists in the material, in the mind, but exists immaterially as a concept. It's a concept.
Can you demonstrate this?
All concepts are immaterial, which means they can't be scientifically demonstrated.
No, that's untrue. That's fundamentally untrue.
Can you demonstrate a concept materially?
All concepts are material. All things are immaterial. There is no such thing as an immaterial thing. To exist necessarily is to be material. I am a substance monist.
Can you demonstrate a concept materially?
Yes.
How?
By looking at the brain and the synapses
firing.
The brain is not a concept.
Brain is material.
Stop. When you think of something, your neurons fire in a particular pattern. You can observe that pattern, and that electrical energy, that is the thought. It is electrical energy firing in your brain. That is a material thing. Those are electrons moving.
Yeah, I would agree that you can observe electricity. I mean, lightning's pretty obvious about that. But you can.
You can also observe it in the brain.
You can. So again, you can observe lightning, which is obviously electrical, but you can't observe. I mean, you can observe a concept materially.
You can observe the neural pathways that the brain uses to think about these things. Yes, you can.
Can you demonstrate physically a concept? Can you show me a concept physically?
Put somebody under an MRI machine and you will see the neural pathways light up. That is electrical energy. Electrons. Those are electrons moving. Those pathways are your thoughts, your memories. That's everything your brain does. That's a material existence. That is energy moving in the material world. I can take an electron microscope and I can see. Yes, you can. You can see the neural pathways that the energy takes as the thought is generated in the brain. We have tons of studies on it.
Thought is generated in the brain. You can't see the thoughts.
Yes, you can. You can see the energy. You can see the electrical signal moving through the brain. And the neural pathway that it takes through the brain is the thought. That's what it is. It has a material existence. It is tangible. You can look at it. You can see it. You can measure it. You can't do any of those things with God. So if you can't do those things with God, that thing doesn't exist.
So you don't think that anything in the natural world is, I'll put this away. So do you think that everything in the world is material? Only material?
Yes, I am a substance monist. All things are material. There is no such thing as an immaterial thing.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Do you have all knowledge?
No.
So is it possible that God could exist in the knowledge you don't have?
Potentially.
Okay.
But until that is demonstrated, I cannot assume that is the case. Until you give me a physical, material demonstration of the existence of this God, I have no reason to believe you.
Well,
because until you do that, this is a claim that you have asserted ex nihilo, from nothing. And like I said, if you cannot materially, tangibly produce this God for us to look at and study and measure, there is nothing more to be said. Because all of your other claims stem from that one presupposition. And until you demonstrate that thing, it is a presupposition.
Yeah, you just conceded that God could exist in the knowledge you don't have.
Yeah, I said that at the beginning of my presentation. I'm not claiming that a God couldn't exist or that a God could not come into the existence in the future. I'm claiming that until you demonstrate that a God exists, we have no reason to believe you.
Yeah, but, okay, so I'll put it like this. I think you are. Just let me say this all without interruption. I think you are engaging in the law of non-contradiction. And why? When I say that, what I mean is, I think if you say that God could exist in the knowledge you don't have, and then say God, I don't believe that God could exist until you demonstrate it's true. I don't think you can hold those to be both.
Okay, let me clarify. I am not saying that a God could not exist materially at some point in the future, or that a God does not currently materially exist. You have not demonstrated that your God currently materially exists. So it makes no sense for me to believe you without you providing any demonstration.
Okay, so let me just say this briefly again without interruption. You have conceded in this debate that God could exist in the knowledge that you don't have, which means he could exist immaterially in the knowledge you don't have.
No.
Just let me finish.
I'm not conceding that a God could exist immaterially.
Okay,
that is not a point that I am conceding.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, let me say it another way. Then you have conceded that God could exist in the knowledge you don't have.
It could be possible that a God exists, and I am not aware of it. Yes.
Okay, that's fair. So God could exist and you're not aware of it.
Yes.
So you could be ignorant of God's existence right now. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
But that God that exists that I am ignorant of must necessarily be material. Because all things are material. There is no such thing as the immaterial. I am a substance monist.
Okay. So let's say, so God could exist and you could be ignorant of his existence.
Yes.
So I would say if God could exist and you could be ignorant of existence, then you can't, I don't think you can honestly, truly make the claim that God has to exist materially.
Again, I am a substance monist. If a thing exists, it necessarily exists materially.
But again, yeah,
it could be, and let me grant you this, it could be that your particular God exists materially, and I am not aware of it, and you do not have any physical evidence for it and cannot provide it. My not believing you does not mean that your God doesn't exist.
Correct.
It just means that I don't believe you, and you have not provided me with a good reason to believe you. So until that point comes, I don't believe you, and I have to act as if your God does not exist. Because it would be unreasonable for me to assume that a thing that you have not demonstrated does in fact exist.
Okay, I'll say 4 quick things, and then I guess we could probably get to closing.
Sure.
That's we could take a 5-minute break and go to Q&A. Yeah, this is probably the quickest debate I've ever done. So again, you've conceded that God could exist in the knowledge you don't have, that you could be ignorant or unaware of his existence, and then you have said that if God does exist, he must exist materially, and if he does, then I need, or some other theist needs, to provide physical, demonstrable, which would be scientific evidence, I suppose, that God does exist materially. Is that fair?
Yeah. Before you expect any reasonable person to entertain you or believe you, you must materially produce this God. And until that point, nobody is required to believe you.
No, I agree. No one's required to.
And nobody should believe you, to be completely honest. If I made the same claims about the existence of an immaterial thing, I should not expect anyone to believe me until I demonstrate it.
Well, I would say obviously that no one is expected to believe either of us on the face of it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want people to believe me. Don't take my word for it. And I'll say it in my closing statement here in a minute.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say the same thing. I don't expect or have any. I don't have any supposition that anyone has to or will believe me. Obviously, I'm hoping that people will. Obviously, as Ken would as well believe that the claims that he's and the arguments that he's making are reasonable. And
I'm not making any claims.
Well, you made quite a bit of claims in your.
I didn't make any claims. These are observations that could be expected to be held by any unaligned individual. This is the status quo. I am representing and I am arguing in the negation for you as the status quo. This is what the vast majority of people already understand.
Vast majority of people would be over.
The vast majority of people understand secular religious pluralism,
which is a small portion of the global population. But as you rightly said, just let me finish.
You are in the minority, and we will talk about this later. But you are in a very tiny minority of people as a young Earth creationist.
Yeah, but again, I'm not arguing for young Earth in this debate.
No, but you are arguing for the material existence of your particular God, which puts you in the minority globally.
Well, yeah. Again, so let's say one thing briefly, and I guess we can get into close. That okay. I mean, a couple things, but they all kind of fall in the same line of reason. That Ken has conceded that God exists in knowledge he doesn't have.
God could exist. Could. Not does. Yeah. Could.
I know. I agree. I know. Okay, so just let me finish that interruption.
Well, don't misrepresent what I'm saying then. Don't omit my words.
Okay, so yeah, but you've admitted that God could exist in the knowledge you don't have.
Yes.
That you could be unaware of his existence.
Yes.
And that if he does exist, that he has to be demonstrated to exist materially or physically.
Yes, before anybody reasonable would be expected to believe you. Or rather, before you expect anyone reasonable to believe you.
and you believe you're a reasonable person, correct?
I would hope so.
Okay. So I would just say before we get into close, and Ken will lead. You can go first with close. That's because I've talked for quite a bit.
No, that was your you set the format here. You go first for closing. It's fine.
Okay, so I have 10 minutes for close. Anthony, want to tell me what I'm gonna say start the clock in a second, then start the clock, and I have 10 minutes for close,
Sure,
and then Ken
sure, whenever you're ready, Rob. Beautiful discourse.
Right. Okay.
Covered a
Yeah,
lot
it feels
of ground.
it feels more like a conversation than a debate, really.
Yeah.
So, okay, you can start the clock now.
Okay, go ahead. Now.
So, to close, I won't use all my 10 minutes, but to close, I would just say that, again, I hope I've, so Cam has argued, and I'll start with Cam's comments first, and then my response to that, and that'll be my close. So, so Cam argued, I said not argued, he, in his opening statements rather, he said things about young earth creation and evolution and arguments from the Bible, and I haven't argued for any of those things in this particular debate. So I'm just saying on the face of it, all of those statements in his opening statement should be discarded from this debate because they have no relevance to this particular debate. Secondly, I would argue that again, if people find my arguments to be unconvincing or not properly articulated, of course, that's up to anyone who will or will be watching. Of course, that stands for both me and Ken. And I would just hopefully convince at least some people who are maybe on the fence about theism or atheism that there is good reason to believe that God exists and that we can and should use things outside the Bible, like I've presented in this particular debate, that including logic, morality, design, and epistemology, that God does exist, and that we can know his existence through, I would say, inference. And I'll just say that immaterial concepts, and I will I guess double down on this, that logic is an immaterial concept, and that thoughts are immaterial things, and that things like logic and morality and thoughts do exist immaterially, and that material concepts like logic, I would argue, require an immaterial being, and we call this being God. And then even Kem, I would argue, would have to concede that the universe has a beginning point, which means I would argue that time, space, and matter had a beginning, and that whoever created this time, created time, space, and matter must be spaceless, material, and timeless. And I would argue, of course, that being is God. Now, again, just to make it perfectly clear, I'm not in this particular debate arguing for a young earth or from the Bible at all, but simply that we can use and should use logic, morality, epistemology, and design as are good arguments for why God does exist. And so I gave the moral argument, the logical argument, the design argument, and the epistemological argument. And I believe that epistemology is a great source for both the existence of God and the refutation, of course, of atheism. And the reason I believe that is because atheism is unverifiable and unprovable. Now, of course, Ken could say the same thing about theism, that a God is unprovable and unverifiable. But I think if you look at this world, this universe, and the astronomical math involved for even the conditions of life, like just to give one argument about that that I haven't used at all in this debate, is that if you take gravitational force, if you say it was in a straight line, and even though kind of gravity is not a material thing either, gravity is a theory, that if you had it in a straight line, just as a way of argument, that if it was moved a fraction, I'm talking a fraction in one direction or the other, that life on this planet could not and would not exist at all. Gravitational force, like it alone, I would argue, requires intelligence because it's not, again, kind of where it needs to be for the conditions of life, but it's precisely where it needs to be for the conditions of life. And I would just close by saying simply that I thank Kevin for doing this debate with me, and that I thank Anthony for moderating it for us. And I hope that obviously that people would take these things into consideration, but also, like Kem said, not take it on the face of just because I believe it and made the claims, or that Ken's or whatever Kem says to believe either of us in the face of it, but to do the research and put in the time and effort yourselves for why both of us are so passionate about our particular positions, and that you should do the research and homework yourselves and not believe either of us in the face of it. But hopefully, obviously, I would say that both of us have presented good arguments for either of our positions. And I thank Kem for doing this debate, for me, Anthony for moderating it, and I thank also everyone who will or is watching it at the moment. And with that, I concede the remainder of my time.
Kem, go ahead, Kem. Closing argument.
Thank you. If you could put my presentation up. Really quick, before I start with closing statements, I do want to thank Rob for being a man of his word and doing the debate and hosting it. I genuinely didn't think this was going to happen after the Twitter drama and the first moderator backed out. But I do want to thank him. I want to thank Anthony for moderating. And I want to thank everybody who's watching for coming by and just witnessing this, because I think it's really important. I think this conversation matters. So some closing thoughts?
Thanks everybody for being present. Sorry, I just like to say.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine.
I apologize. Go ahead, Ken.
You're fine. What we are observing in Robert Gruhn's position and argumentation is the death rattle of an ideology on life support. Religiosity globally is on the steepest decline it's ever been on in all of human history, and religious non-affiliation is trending upwards as the fastest growing group demographically. Christianity has proven itself to be a failed experiment 2,000 years running, incapable of properly dealing with the progress of human knowledge and inquiry as time has passed. Young Earth creationism represents a minority within a minority within a minority, the loudest, most vocal, and smallest group of ardent believers in an ideology that not only does not conform with our understanding of reality, but actively rejects it in favor of a stagnant, hateful, and violent mythos dating back to the Bronze Age. As part of the death throes, this ideology has galvanized con men and possessed those who know no better to spread an anti-realist message of submission to a cruel god of misery, destruction, and death. No reasonable person need do more than simply listen to the nonsense presented here today to see clearly what is happening. The game is over and faith has lost. I am not a scholar. I'm not even formally educated. I am a double dropout layman with absolutely nothing except an internet connection and a desire to learn about the world I live in. And that's about all that anyone needs to dismantle the ideology of faith and lay bare its inability to make any meaningful observations about our world. All of the information and evidence needed to understand why Robert and people who believe as he does are wrong is available at your fingertips. You are likely listening to or watching this debate on a device capable of showing you the truth if you only take the leap and begin to search for it. Thousands of years passing scientific knowledge down has given us a wealth of solid foundations on which to perform the experiments necessary, to gain a more perfect understanding of our place in the cosmos. And nearly all of the modern world depends on this science to provide the comforts you make use of every single day. The same science that helped humans design and create your cell phone helps humans measure the composition of planets millions of light years away, and it is all accessible to you through the internet. Do not take my word for it. Go test the claims yourself. Produce the data with your own hands and see if it lines up with what we observe. The adherents of these ideologies must be educated into modernity. As a species, we cannot allow these ideas to exist unchallenged. We should strive to break them down and educate whenever possible to prevent more vulnerable people from falling into the hands of dangerous charlatans and snake oil salesmen. The world is a cruel place to our species, but the way to combat nature is by understanding and learning about it, not by denying it. Thank you very much. If you like and saw what you heard, like what you saw and heard, these are the places where you can find me.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Rob. I really enjoyed the discourse. I would like to see a part 2, but
there will not be a part 2.
That's why I'm bringing it up to you, Ken. What would make you participate in a part 2? What do you need?
I will not be participating in a part 2.
No, there's got to be something that would make
there is nothing else that needs to be said, and Rob has proven himself to be an individual that is not worth talking to. I have tried and tried and tried, and anybody who goes to my channel can look at all of the time I spent, multiple hours that I spent talking to Rob. And after all of the drama that happened on Twitter, I am not interested in sharing screen time with Rob ever again. His behavior online is unacceptable. I'm not going to go into it here because it doesn't need to be said. If you want to figure out what happened, you can go watch previous live streams where we talk about it. But Rob's behavior online is unacceptable, and I do not want to be associated with anybody who treats people like this online. So I'm not interested in a part.
Okay. I am.
Well, I wish you good luck, Anthony. Better men than me have tried and failed.
No, Kim, I think you covered a lot of ground.
I hope so.
That perhaps Rob could address in a part 2. That's my only.
He's more than welcome to address anything that I've said here, or anything that I've said in any past live stream, or anything that I might say in the future in a video. I will not be sharing a live stream with him ever again.
Okay, I appreciate you both.
No worries.
It was wonderful for me. I learned a lot. And
okay, so
was great. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
What were you saying? What was the last thing you said, Anthony?
I like this presentation. Like, he was very detailed. He was very prepared. He put a lot of thought and time into this.
I did. I worked very hard on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said.
Shout out to Peter from YouTube, Gonna Go For It, Aaron Ross, producer, who helped me finish the editing on this. Yeah, Peter, you're a wonderful person, and I really appreciate your help and insight on the presentation. Thank you so much.
Good job. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that, like I said at the beginning of my opening statements, I even before I saw Kim's presentation, I was going to say that, I did say that a debate like this requires a lot of time and effort, and like most people who have never done a debate don't know how mentally and emotionally taxing it can be. I'm only speaking for myself. That debates that I've done prior to this one have been extremely emotionally and taxing for me. The debate hasn't been. This debate has been more fun and engaging than it feels like. I would say actually it feels more like it's been a conversation than a debate. Definitely, I want to say that Kim is right that definitely some of my online engagement in the past has definitely been unsavory, say the very least, and I have made a ton of mistakes online, and I make no what's the word? I take full responsibility for the things I've said and done, and there's no excuse for them. But yeah,
good on you for taking responsibility on that. By the way,
yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, for sure. The only person that I hold responsible for the things I say and do is the person looking back at me in the mirror. And I've made tons of mistakes. I don't claim by any means to be a perfect person or a perfect man, but I'm trying to do better and go forward with a more sense of a healthier mindset. And just, I'm trying to spend a lot less time on social media, and that's been helpful for me. And I think right now we're going to take a 5-minute break and then go into Q&A.
Sounds good.
Okay, very well.
All right. So you can keep the clock going so we know it's been, so we should be back at 1:13.
Okay, very well.
Yes,
Oh boy.
Hey, Kim.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. Man, you came out guns blasting.
I had dude, he gave me 20 minutes. He gave me 20 minutes. I was
I
gonna
know.
do that whole thing in the first 20 minutes, and then he was like, "Well, we
I
can do
know.
closing statements later." Okay, cool, man. you know,
You brought up so many points, and in my head, I go, okay, it's going off the rails because it was supposed to be more structured, but I felt that you had to butt heads because like because you covered so much ground. I felt like you had to be one-on-one.
Yeah, I expected Rob to come with more guns, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, because you came out blasting.
Well,
Hey,
I figured this is a huge.
You came out with two guns blasting.
Cover. I have to, you know. I didn't know it was going to just boil it down to one question, but sure, whatever. Do we have any Q&A questions from?
Yeah, do we have? Did anyone ask the Q&A to send you DMs for the Q&A, Anthony?
No, I got nothing.
All right, let's see if it's in.
If there's no Q&A,
let's see if there's anything. Well, I got some things in my private chat.
People in the chat.
Oh, Anthony. I didn't see Anthony was
asking stuff in the private chat. Yeah, but if there's anybody in the chat that wants to ask a question, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay.
Yeah, words, information, materially, point to identity, logic, materially, speaking of asserting things with no proof. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, this guy Bill Hicks. All of these things that you're describing are material. They come from the brain. They're material. I'm a substance monist. You will not.
The thing I don't like when I've been extremely guilty of this myself, but I try not to do this anymore. Is insult people when they make a claim that you may not agree with. I mean, I think Kim and I have both proved that we can have a discourse or debate without resulting to insults.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any reason to insult you, to be honest, especially not during a conversation like this when I'm required to take you seriously, and I want to take you seriously, right? As my interlocutor.
Yeah. I mean, that's I feel the same way.
I've got some questions in my chat. Noble Pursuits in my chat wants to know where you're recording, Rob.
Me? Oh, it's on YouTube. Yeah.
No. Where physically are you right now? Where is your studio?
I'm in a study room in a library.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got another question. Anybody in my chat, just ask questions in the chat, and I'll make sure that they get answered.
Does anyone ask?
Peter from YouTube gonna go for it. Wants to know when you're gonna back up your claims. When is later?
Yeah. I thought I had some anyways, but again, I'm going to respond to there is a question in my chat too from Jeffrey Wilders. He said, how can a young Earth creationist claim he's using logic? But yeah, again, I'm just going to say simply that I wasn't arguing for young Earth in this particular debate. I am a young Earth creationist, but I wasn't arguing for that in this particular debate, so I don't feel the need to I don't feel it's a necessary question.
Okay. I have a question from Swarm Tech. How can the existence of life defy the energy well of entropy?
Is that for you or me?
Question. I don't know. I don't really have an answer.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I don't have it offhand. Do you know what the actual definition of entropy is, Ken?
Entropy, I know, is the tendency of closed systems to reduce themselves to the lowest possible energy state.
And what was his question exactly again?
The question is, how can the existence of life defy the energy well of entropy? I'm not sure, Swarm. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
This is not.
I would say the same thing. Yeah, this is not something I'm
properly educated on.
So so I'll leave that for now.
Phantom in my chat wants to know what it would take to make me not a monomaterialist. Demonstrate the existence of a non-material thing. If you can hold a soul in your hand and submit it for inspection, I would be forced to believe you.
Yeah, but again, I would submit. Okay, Yeah. Okay. So I'll submit that again employs a lot of non-contradiction, where an immaterial thing can't be demonstrated to materially exist.
I mean, yeah, I would say that you can, but you have to do it. Until you do it, I have no reason to assume that any immaterial thing exists. I have never laid eyes on an immaterial thing.
Well, that's because if you did, it wouldn't be immaterial.
Does immaterial mean not observable?
Yes.
If it's not observable, it can't be measured, so it doesn't exist. End of question.
I would say
radio
that's a ridiculous position.
What do you think a radio receiver does?
Are you asking me or?
No, I'm asking Anthony.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think a radio transceiver does?
Religiously, you just brought up the point of the Holy Spirit.
Sorry, I didn't try to do that.
Right, but you said radio waves can't be measured.
Yeah, here, what you just said, though, is that you can measure the Holy Spirit without realizing you said it. What
do you mean? Are you implying that the Holy Spirit is made up of radio waves?
No, in Christianity, they believe in the Holy Spirit, that the Holy Spirit can enter a human body.
Uh-huh.
And Christians claim that they feel the Holy Spirit. So they're acknowledging the invisible or the immaterial in their own body.
Well, they are stating that they believe it.
Yeah, and they're saying they measured it.
Sure, but that's an internal experience that we can't replicate reliably. And that also doesn't stand up under scientific scrutiny. When we try to observe this thing happen in double-blind studies, we realize that it's just down to what you believe. Okay. If you have internally convinced yourself that the Holy Spirit exists, you will identify physical experiences with that Holy Spirit. There is no way to replicate the existence of the Holy Spirit. I mean, like, can you produce a human being without a soul? Can you isolate the soul away from a human being? How do we study these things in isolation? That's my question.
I don't know. Maybe Rob has an answer.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Rob, can you produce a human being that does not have a soul?
No.
Okay, so then there's no reason to think that being human and having a soul is something that we can... If there is no distinction, there's no reason to make the distinction.
Okay. I was gonna say that. So I just pull out from my opening statements that one of the definitions of moral is arising from the inner sense of right and wrong. And I'll ask Ken, if you have an inner sense of right and wrong, how can that be demonstrated or observed materially?
If you were to put my brain under an MRI machine and show me things that I personally consider to be immoral, you would see my brain light up in a particular way.
Right, but I would also suggest to you that that morality doesn't only derive from the brain, but the heart as well.
The heart is not a thinking instrument. The heart is just the organ that pumps blood.
But would you not agree that emotions arise from both the heart and the mind?
No, they don't arise from the heart. The heart has no neurons. It is a pump. It is a biological pump for your blood. Your emotions exist up here. This is a human analogy, right? This is anthropocentrism, right? Because we do feel physical sensations associated with our emotions, because they're material things, right? We feel them physically.
But when I feel something emotionally, I don't feel it in my mind.
You feel it in your body, because of the parasympathetic system. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But that is indicative of a material existence when it comes to emotions. Emotions are material things.
Can you demonstrate emotion materially and put it under a lab?
Yes. Put a human being in an MRI machine and show them things that will emotionally stir them, and you will see the emotions happening in the brain, and you will see.
No, I don't dispute that, but I'm saying, can you take emotion? I get maybe.
I'll do you one better. You can inject emotions into people through the brain. You can hijack the centers in the brain and artificially create emotional responses.
Yeah, I think the military has definitely proven that you can definitely alter and manipulate the emotions of people.
Yeah. Also, like drugs are a fantastic example of entering into altered emotional and conscious states, right? So physical things can affect a physical sensation that you have because it's a physical thing, right?
Oh, I don't
And we can
dispute
measure
that.
just how much your emotions are altered by those drugs.
Yeah, I mean, even a physical thing as simple as food, what can alter your brain chemistry? I don't dispute that.
Right.
But I would still suggest that how you feel is still immaterial.
It's internal. It's not immaterial.
Mhm.
It's an
Well,
internal
okay.
conscious experience that you're having that you can't you can communicate it to other people, right?
Right, I
But
can
you can't,
communicate it to other people, but I say I can't. I'll give you an example. If I was nailing nails into a board and I accidentally hit the hammer I was using on my thumb instead of a nail by accident, I can tell you that in my experience, it feels like an 8 out of 10 in terms of the pain I'm experiencing from that particular experience. But there's no way to quantify that.
Sure there is.
How?
We look at the chemical reactions that happen in your brain. We look at the neural pathways in your brain that those electrical signals take, and you can see the pain happen.
I can't quantify to you, is what I'm saying, Cam. That
maybe because you don't have the language, but that doesn't mean we can't observe it happening in reality.
Right. So again, I can tell you that it's happening, and that
no, we can see it happening. That's how you've got it backwards. You cannot perfectly communicate, but we can reliably observe and replicate these things in your own head. You can't transfer emotional states to other people, but you can communicate them in a way that affects others. That is a material thing that has happened.
Right. So I would agree that, yeah, you can, obviously, if I'm hitting myself, that's a physical observable thing.
Yeah.
And I can articulate to you that it feels extremely painful. In my opinion, that I would rate it an 8 out of 10, but I can't quantify to you that's actually 80% of
You've just done that. You've just done that. By saying it's an 8 out of 10, you have quantified it. You have attached data to a physical emotion.
Yeah, I've attached a number to it. Yeah,
that's quantification. That is literally the definition of quantification. You are quantifying an emotional experience.
I'm quantifying it to myself. Yeah. My quantification is
in communication, you are quantifying it to other people.
Yeah, but other people have no way to know that.
Yeah. Well, you quantify
other than my articulation of speech,
you communicate that it's an 8 out of 10. You've communicated a quantification of that pain.
Yeah, in my own brain.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I can't demonstrate to other people that that's true. Because other people may have
put your brain under an MRI and then hit yourself with the hammer. And you will see the sections in your brain firing that are responsible for pain.
My point simply is that my pain tolerance and other people's pain tolerance could be very different.
Sure. That's fine.
Yeah, and then other people would say, even if they did the same thing, a completely different ratio.
Yeah, it's an internal subjective experience. You're absolutely correct. But that doesn't mean it's not observable.
Okay. Well, no, I'd agree. I would agree with that.
Just like morality is a subjective internal thing, but that doesn't mean it's not observable. We can observe moral systems acting on people.
Yeah, but I would suggest
we can observe people crafting their own moral systems internally.
Yeah,
right. You and I are having a debate about morality, about what moral system we prefer. Right. You prefer yours, which is aligned with the Bible, and I prefer mine, which is aligned with my personal experiences. Morality is subjective.
But I would suggest to you that things like murder, sexual assault, kidnapping are objectively wrong, morally.
No, we all agree that they're wrong, but that doesn't make them objective.
Okay.
Objective would mean that nobody can disagree with this. And surely you and I can imagine somebody who believes that murder isn't immoral, which means it's not objective because you can disagree with it.
Yeah, but again, I would propose rather that morality is objective whether we like it or believe it or not.
Again, the ability of me and other people to disagree with the fact that, or not the fact, with the idea that morality is objective is proof that morality is not objective. If morality were objective, we would have no way of disagreeing about it.
Well, it would be indisputable.
No, that's just what it means to be objective. Objective means it is independently observable. You cannot dispute it. Everybody can see it. Like the sky is blue is an objective fact. We can all see it. Right? Mm-hmm. Your blue might look different than my blue, but we apply the same label to it. Nobody is arguing that the sky is green.
No, but compare. I would say comparing the sky being blue to morality being subjective is a false equivalence.
No, it's not a false equivalence. The difference between an objective and a subjective thing. Morality is subjective. The idea that the sky is blue is not.
Okay. Well, obviously, we fundamentally disagree.
And as a matter of fact, we have an explanation for why the sky is blue. Right?
Yeah, there's science
Rayleigh
behind it.
scattering. No, Rayleigh scattering. That's why we know that the sky is blue. Right?
Yeah,
because of
which
how our
the
atmosphere
sky's
interacts
blue
with the light
is
that comes from the sun.
observable.
Yeah, it's observable, right? And we can test
Mhm.
it. You can't do this with morality. Morality is not an objective thing. That's why we disagree on morality. Half of our political conversations are about morality, about what moral system we want to apply to a country. Morality is subjective. There are a lot of baseline things that most people agree on, yeah, like murder and sexual assault, which, by the way, your Bible condones, right? And if you want to go over those individual citations, I can bring out my notes.
Again, just I would say I'm not, for the sake of this debate, I'm not arguing for or from the Bible.
Well, yeah, but you are arguing for a moral system that is aligned with the Bible, right? When you say that morality is objective, what you're saying is this is the moral system that I believe people should subscribe to. This is the correct option. And the correct option in your mind supports, or at very best, does not uniformly condone a bunch of really reprehensible and heinous shit. Like war crimes,
but again,
and violence, and slavery, and issuing the death penalty for a bunch of random things.
But again, like for this debate, I'm not arguing for or from the Bible, but just simply that God does exist in using.
Yeah, that's arguing from the
things
Bible.
Outside the Bible for the reason that
that's
God
arguing from the Bible. You are presupposing that the God of your Bible exists. That is arguing from the Bible.
There's arguments that a lot of other theists, I mean, even Muslims would
sure, and they are arguing from the Quran because they are presupposing that their book is true.
But I'm saying we can use it, as I've demonstrated in this debate, that I have not argued anything from the Bible.
You've made a bunch of claims, Rob. You haven't demonstrated anything.
Right. Well, I mean, I made positions and claims in this debate that I didn't use the Bible once.
Rob, arguing that the God of the Bible exists is arguing for the truth of the Bible.
I would just argue. I just argued that God exists.
Yeah, that your God exists, Rob, the God of your Bible. That is arguing for the truth of Christianity.
I don't think I was arguing. I wasn't arguing for Christianity in Spain.
You were arguing for the Christian God, correct? Because you're not arguing for the Jewish or the Muslim God. You're not arguing for the Buddhist God, which I don't even think they have.
I think the Jewish and the Christian God are one and the
same. I would say Jews would disagree with you because you think Jesus is God.
Well, at least the first half.
And the Jews would very much disagree with you on that.
Well,
so again, until you can demonstrate,
it's called the Judeo-Christian faith, but anyways.
Well, yeah, because Christianity is the offshoot of Judaism, but again, the Jews would disagree on your conception of God.
They would disagree that Jesus came
is God.
But I don't think they would.
Because you believe that Jesus is God, correct?
Oh, for sure I do. But
okay, so then the Jews would disagree with you. They would disagree with you on your definition of God. It's just a matter of fact. I'm sorry if this is news to you, right? But
is there anything else? I'll check my chat. Is there any other questions in yours, Ken?
No, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, no, I mean, is there any questions in your chat?
Peter wants to know if you can unblock everybody that you have blocked in your chat so that they can come in and join and ask questions, but I guess we're past that at this point.
I guess so. I didn't honestly. I didn't know that either. But
yeah. Anyways. Peter also asked if the Holy Spirit can enter into your body, it can be measured. Has this ever happened? Has anyone ever measured the Holy Spirit entering a body?
Well, no, because he's immaterial.
Okay, so. Once again, claiming that a thing exists without being able to demonstrate it.
Doesn't mean he doesn't exist.
It means you can't demonstrate it, and it means that nobody should believe you.
Yeah, I guess in your opinion, but
yeah, in my opinion, in the opinion of most reasonable people. And also, my opinion is kind of irrelevant on the matter.
True.
Until you demonstrate it, you shouldn't expect any reasonable person to believe you.
That's your opinion, but you're welcome to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else on your end?
No, Done. Yeah. Thanks again
Alrighty then.
for
And
this
yeah,
debate, and
thank you
thanks
for
again to
having
Anthony
us.
to moderating.
Thank you for Anthony. Thank you to Anthony for helping us.
Yeah.
And for those of you in my chat, I'm going to take a quick 5-10 minute break, and we're going to have an after show in my on my channel. So look out for that one.
Can you provide the link, Ken?
I cannot provide the link yet because I have to set it up in StreamYard. But if you want to go to my channel, I can throw up my
Yeah, please.
Hold on. Share screen, untitled presentation, share, click the slideshow. There you go. If you could throw it up.
Okay.
This is where you can find me. That's my personal Twitter at KEMREGIK. And this is my atheist YouTube channel, which is Tear Your Hair Out on YouTube. I have debate clips from Rob and I's conversations. I'm planning on dropping a scripted video on Tom Askell very soon. And I will be doing an after show dissecting. Tom Askell is a senior pastor for Founders Ministry.
Okay, never.
Yeah, he's a well-known speaker, but I've never heard of him. He did a TV appearance on the First TV, so I'm dissecting that in a video. That's not done yet. It'll be done in the next couple of days. Okay. I'm doing an after show, and I will probably cut up this VOD and do a scripted thing, awesome. Sort of dissecting it formally. But other than that, that's where you guys can find me. Other than my personal YouTube channel, which is also just Kemregic, but I don't post atheist stuff. Other than the one video I did on Rob, that's a sort of just grab bag for all of the stuff that I do. Okay.
Oh yeah, and I guess they can find me at on my YouTube channel too at Rob Pilled Apologetics. All right, I think that's about it.
I think that's it.
Do you wish to say anything, Anthony?
Well, thanks for everybody for being here. It was really, really, really. I enjoyed it a lot. I would love to see a part 2, but that's another story. Maybe Rob can come up with some responses to Ken to satisfy what he expects.
Yeah. I'll be releasing the presentation in my notes, by the way. Rob, if you want to take a crack at those win conditions, I will concede the debate posthumously. Not posthumously, but post ex facto if you meet any of those.
I know what you mean.
Well, I mean, if you want to kill me first, and then, well, I mean,
no,
yeah,
I
sure,
don't. I have no intention.
But yeah, if you manage to meet any of those win conditions, I will concede the debate post ex facto.
Amazing.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and also just want to say just before we close, which has nothing to do with this debate, but has to do with Anthony and myself. Anthony will also be the moderator for my debate with another gentleman on June 15th between myself and a Muslim. And I'll just leave it at that.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. Anyways,
make sure to ask about Aisha, by the way.
Yeah, I will. All right. So, yeah, thanks again, Kem, for debating and conversing with me. And thanks again to Anthony for moderating and everyone who is watching. All right. All right.
All right.
Have a great day, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to end the stream.